A few bare children came to the countryside in the middle of the night without their parents' knowledge to play with the camera they bought, and just complained that the light was too dim to shoot anything. And then, it was 1:23 a.m. on April 26, 1986, when the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, the largest in the Soviet Union, had just exploded. It was the worst nuclear power disaster in human history, and the first mega accident to be rated internationally as a Level 7 event. Inflationary losses amounted to $200 billion, and 3.2 million people were exposed to excessive radiation, including 170,000 deaths within 10 years. But just a few hours after the explosion, a man drove against traffic to the site of the incident. His name was Lai, originally a firefighter in charge of the nuclear power plant, who had just been transferred the day before, but in the early hours of the morning he heard that his teammates were already out in full force, and driven by his sense of duty. He also immediately ran to the front line, and on the way there were constantly falling birds falling from the sky, leading to a small car accident on the list. He got out of the car and looked toward the nuclear power plant, rolling smoke amidst is a death blue light eerie creepy. But Lai still followed the passing Xiao fire truck continued to go, and what awaited him ahead was a tragic human inferno. Chernobyl explosion generated by nuclear radiation is actually how terrible? We now know that the radiation dose generated at the time was equivalent to 400 times the Hiroshima atomic bomb. A few hours later radiation has exceeded the normal value of 600,000 times. But the firefighters on the scene at the time knew nothing of this. Only to see in the rubble above, fire hoses constantly pressurized, but also as if never put out the flames burning around. Lai's teammates after exploration to know, the original nuclear power plant reactor explosion. This is not an ordinary fire. The earliest arrived a group of firefighters is because the radiation began to appear one after another adverse reactions, the light dizziness, vomiting, skin burns, heavy people quickly cancer, died on the spot. But Lai could not care so much. As a firefighter, he resolutely put on his back equipment and went upstairs again and again, carrying his former teammates back one by one. Hospital ambulances came one after another, but the number of injured was too many, and could only save the seriously ill first. The doctor who is not that physically fit just stayed around for a while and got a nosebleed. So Lai temporarily acted as a driver and sent his teammates to the hospital. Halfway there, his teammate's whole body was swollen and he had to cut his throat to resume breathing. In just half a day, the hospital was already overcrowded, packed with injured firefighters. But Lai just sat down and waited for not 2 minutes. There was immediately a new bed. Because at the same time there are constantly patients died, there are constantly beds vacant. Due to different physical qualities, some people will die after 5 minutes of exposure to heavy radiation, and some people will be fine for 5 hours. Lai was fortunate that his health was not too serious after such a long and dangerous rescue. Soon after he became familiar with the nuclear power plant stereotype, he was called to an emergency meeting by the government. Experts pointed out that once the hot reactor after the explosion came into contact with the water in the cooling pool at the bottom, it would immediately trigger a larger steam explosion that would be released into the air in a sustained and radioactive manner, which would be a disaster for all mankind. All of Europe would be at stake. Now volunteers must be found to dive underwater and manually open the valve to drain the water. During the process, the volunteers will stew in the boiling water for 8 minutes and will be exposed to intense radiation. But the government has also pledged to reward and honor these heroes with generous rewards and to send them to Switzerland for high-profile treatment. Only local firefighters know the terrain because of the intricate passageways under the plant. As the only remaining firefighter in the nearly destroyed fire department, Len is naturally the best candidate for the task, and the situation is urgent. But he hesitated. The rescue operation is likely to have no return. All teammates are dead or injured in hospital. Why do you want to rush to death? Not to mention that he had just reunited with his girlfriend and son not long ago. For the sake of his family, he decisively refused the mission. But when Lai hurried home and prepared to evacuate with his family, he discovered that his son was filming next to the nuclear power plant during the explosion, and he was exposed to lethal radiation and is now dying. On the way to evacuate, looking at his weakened son and his anxious lover, Lai makes a decision with major implications.